Let's talk a little bit about how contractors are fired, because no one else is talking about it. And funny enough, Bleeding Cool of all sites is, but weeks, if not months, after Ethan Van Sciver and myself were saying something similar. He has insider knowledge of the industry itself, so that's where his knowledge comes from. Mine comes from having contracting experience. I know how contractors get fired. So TLDR, contractors don't get fired. They just don't get their contracts renewed. So you don't have to announce any layoffs or nothing. And that's what's happening in DC. You guys remember those past two bloodbaths and apparently a third one on the way? When they laid off a bunch of people, and Ethan was saying it, and I was saying it even back then. The actual number of people losing their jobs are considerably higher than what's being announced, because they're only announcing like the editorial and management and administrative staff, but they're not talking about the people who just aren't going to get any more contracts. But Bleeding Cool has finally started catching on. The week several DC Comics creators realized they were out of work. Bleeding Cool understands that this month a number of DC Comics writers and artists realized that their upcoming work for DC Comics may not be quite as upcoming as they thought. Well played. They discovered this, in some cases, by reading the DC Comics solicitations for March of current year +1. So the way it works in comics is the comic shops, they buy these books 3 months in advance. And some of the stuff that was scheduled to be coming out, it's nowhere to be seen. Real weird. The reduction in the number of titles, as well as contracts being previously signed with creators who were meant to be working on the 5G line, have meant that a number of creators without such contracts have been jettisoned from their titles. Now, let me go back into something that Ethan was saying, and this is again pretty much relying on his insider knowledge of DC Comics. If you already have a signed contract for something, chances are pretty good that they're not going to back out of a contract that's already been signed. So they will honor the existing contract. They may not actually even bother releasing the book, but they'll pay you to do what they they'll pay you for the work like they promised. You do the work like you promised, they'll pay you like they promised. So there's a lot of people right now, apparently, that are just doing overtime. They're rushing to get their work in, and they're cutting all the corners too. They're pretty much assuming it's not going to see print anyway. They're rushing to get their work done so they can end all their existing contracts. They can get their money in, like just not even give DC a chance to try to walk back on those existing contracts. Again, chances are pretty low, but still not zero. And then they'll be out looking for other jobs, I guess. But that's what's going on. And with editorial numbers being decimated over the last year, it seems that whoever was meant to inform such creators of the change in upcoming work may not have told everyone. So here's what everyone else is talking about. That while DC was firing everybody, they apparently fired the person whose job it was to tell the other people that they weren't going to. In this case, it's not that they were being fired, but that upcoming contracts aren't going to be upcoming. Now, I will say again, it may sound heartless, but if you're a contractor, this is just the reality of life. Sometimes you may get lucky and you have a reliable recurring contract. Unless someone else happens to win the bid for that contract later, chances are it's just going to renew it's going to go back to you again. But yeah, I worked a job before where the contract had to be renegotiated and renewed every 3 months. So it was pretty much, we knew that we had a very high chance of getting the contract again. But if the customer either ran out of money, or if we had some better competitors that happened to show up out of left field and make a much better sale, we knew damn well that we may only have a maximum of 3 months of employment left before we're all scrambling looking for work. That's just the reality of being a contractor. And for what it's worth, before people say like, oh, that's why like regular employees are better. Nope. If you live in most of the country, if you're not unionized, if you're a regular employee, it's not really that much difference, to be honest with you. You have no more security as a regular employee than a contractor does. The difference is you actually get fired. You actually get laid off. The company can let you go at any time for any reason, and they will do so. You get a bit more of an official process when you are being evicted from the company. That's about the only difference between contractors and regular employees. But regular employees are in no way more secure than contractors. I've fucking seen it happen before when I worked for a giant fucking defense contractor. The employees, a lot of times they laid off employees and kept a lot of contractors. It all depends. The only difference is how they're fired, which is why I'm specifically talking about that, which is why that's in the title, how contractors are fired. A regular employee gets a proper like pink slip. They may get some severance. They get paid out PTO and all that good stuff. They might even get a 2-week notice if they're really lucky. But contractors, you don't fire a contractor. If the contract was for 3 months and you meet the requirements of the contract, your work is actually finished. You're done. The job is done. There is no guarantees that whoever gave you that job is going to be there to give you another job when you finish this one. But the job you were specifically hired to complete has been completed. Now, I guess if you got fired in the middle of a contract, that may be more of a process because all these contracts have clauses in there like what happens if either party breaks it off early. So there's ways to be fired as well, I guess. But most of the time, the periods for these contracts are short enough that you very rarely see contractors getting fired, unless they fuck up. Okay, that may be a little bit different. So in a way, you may actually have more security as a contractor. You at least know you're pretty damn secure for the duration of the contract you signed, unless your employer is willing to pay the early termination penalties. As a regular employee, though, nope, not so much. They could just let you go whenever for any reason because that was in your employment contract. All this boring shit. Why did I bore you with all this? Just to remind you that the actual numbers of people who have lost their jobs in the first 2 DC bloodbaths and going forward are considerably higher than what's being reported. The only job losses being reported are the actual firings. Oh, this executive, this editor, these were like full-time non-contractor employees. But the artists, like the pencilers, the inkers, the letterers, the writers, these people are, I would say all contractors, but I don't know, maybe there's a few that aren't. But all the ones I know of are contract employees. They don't get fired. If the editor who was working with them on their projects gets fired, the best they can hope for really is that the company will honor their existing contracts, their existing projects, and then they're fired too. So for every editor that loses their jobs, you can be quite sure that there's multiple teams of artists and writers that are also not going to be getting any future work. Again, technically speaking, they were not employees anyway. They were freelance contractors. They're not quote unquote getting fired. They just have no more work. But the end result is the same. They're out of a job. DC is in a lot worse shape than everyone's been letting on. Which is why other people have been pointing out, like, don't be surprised to see people that were primarily working at DC before Now, seeing their names on Marvel projects, IDW, Image, Dark Horse, Boom, it can happen. So, as the article continues, cue a number of phone calls, email threads, and even an occasional WhatsApp shoutouts with longtime DC creators looking for work, with a flurry of editors at Marvel, Dark Horse, IDW, Boom, Dynamite, and the like receiving, "Hey, I'm suddenly available" messages. The irony is, every single one of these companies is not doing that well either. Well, okay, maybe I don't know about Dark Horse. They might be doing okay. Boom recently, weren't they the ones that put out Berserker? I think Boom might have found a way to do okay. IDW is definitely a burning dumpster fire. Marvel is definitely a burning dumpster fire. Dynamite, I'm not sure of. They tried to fence it and appease both sides. Now no one wants to work with them. I don't know. I know they're still releasing books, but I don't know about their finances. They might be okay, maybe not. I wouldn't expect IDW or Marvel to be doing anything, though. Expect to see a few creators who are all but only known for their work at DC Comics popping up in solicitations in months to come, if there's anyone still looking for work. The fact is, maybe no one's hiring. Is that something anyone has considered? Just because all these DC people are out looking for work, does Dark Horse, Boom, Dynamite, do these companies have the money to hire these people, though? Do they have the need for them? Do they have a lot of open projects that they're looking for creative teams for and haven't found yet? I would guess no. I'm quite sure that the people that are at these companies now may be the only ones that are going to be there. Again, Image being an exception because Image is completely different. It also doesn't help that while DC Comics has created more anthology titles and titles with backup strips, the number of titles and the total page count page count of work being created has dropped dramatically. Yeah, I mean, Ethan was right. He said, they may add like a 6-page side story to the end of a mainline book, but now that creative team is being paid for 6 pages instead of 24. Not going to go well, man. In March this year, DC Comics listed 62 new items totaling 2,632 pages, though the total amount of artwork generated is less as it includes advertising and editorial pages, costing $281 made up of $3.99 and 9 $4.99 titles. Okay. And in December, they were soliciting 52 items, totaling 2,352 pages, costing $286, made up of 29 titles at $3.99 and 9 at $5. In March of current year plus one, DC has solicited 39 items, totaling 1,896 pages, costing $221, made up of 16 at $4.99, 12 at $5, dubbed Stepping Over the Line at $4.99. Hey, why the hell not, man? And they've already reported that after this whole event is done, after what was it called, Future State, after that's done, they're cutting the line to like 34 books, 14 of which are Batman books. And Ethan was suggesting that, from his insider knowledge, maybe they're going to cut even further after that. Maybe after this is done, they're going to cut down to like 12 books. While other publishers have also seen reductions, DC titles number have dropped by over a third in a year, and the $4.99 price point has jumped. And those creating that art have to find somewhere else to go. Does anyone else want them? See, that's the question. None of these other mainstream publishers they may not want them. Now, alternatively, maybe one of these other mainstream publishers will see the more talented DC people looking for work, and they'll just scratch their head and go, hey, wait a minute, I got this bottom tier team working on this other book. Maybe I'll just replace them with some top tier DC talent. That might happen. So if they end up getting jobs at these other companies, they might end up costing other people jobs instead, which is entirely possible. But alternatively, is Comicsgate going to hire him? Nah. They may have to just make their own. After spending years insulting the fans and attacking the fans on social media, their only option may be to ask the fans that they've been kicking around to forgive them and back their creator-owned project, which I don't see that happening. I don't. Their only options at this point are probably to learn to code or go get a cashier job at Walmart or something. Yeah, I really love Ethan's intro, to be honest with you, when he was covering this topic initially. It's like, oh, for years, these mainstream comics pros have been telling us we'll never work in the mainstream industry. And neither will they! I was going to say sad but true, but honestly, I don't feel sad for him. These are horrible people who've been attacking us for years, thinking that there's going to be no repercussions for their actions, so let them reap what they've sown. I just can't wait to see how many of them will actually try to go back to the fans they've been insulting for years and beg for forgiveness when they're desperate. All I know is it's going to be a bait and switch. We know what they really think about us. So even if they create something good, it's not going to last. They're only going to create good content until they feel comfortable again and don't have to worry about their jobs. And all of a sudden, all pretense is out the window and they're right back to attacking us. So DC Comics, Marvel, all of you damn comic pros who've been smack talking the fans all these years, quite honestly, you're not going to be missed. Oh man, I am so excited to tell you guys right now that finally, after about a year of build-up and shilling, we have launched Blade Devil on Indiegogo, and so far it is doing so well thanks to awesome people like you. If you haven't backed it yet, then please check the links in the description and check out Blade Devil on Indiegogo. You will not be disappointed. Looking forward to seeing you there.